This video is sponsored by the Opera GX browser, who I'll take a brief moment to thank, and I guess the brand wants me to go down the horror route with this, so I'll oblige. Does the prospect of default browsers killing your resources keep you up at night? Heavy computer freezes sending chills down your spine? Well, I'd recommend checking out Opera GX, which has you covered via the GX control panel, allowing you to limit the CPU and RAM you want the browser to use, meaning you can open several tabs at once without hurting your gaming performance. Speaking of gaming, the many spooky villains you come across might look cool, but they can be daunting. Worry not though, while there's a ton of stuff to customize in Opera GX, there's no need to feel overwhelmed. Try out the GX mods, where you can alter your entire browsing experience with just one click. You can pick from existing mods or create your own that work best for you. And what's more, switching to Opera GX is easier than, hammering on buttons to escape a QuickTime event boulder. With the import tool that transfers all your settings from your previous browser to GX. Opera GX is also compatible with every Chrome extension, so if you're looking to move away from default browsers to something more usable and customizable and have fun while doing it, download Opera GX via my link in the description. Thank you to Opera GX for sponsoring the video, and now on with the show. It's long been a meme at this point that Horizon just can't catch a break. Zero Dawn? Why not release that a few days before Breath of the Wild? Forbidden West? No way any FromSoft title could come around the corner and usurp any goodwill we might have built up, surely. Oh no! And it's a shame, because while Zero Dawn did very little for me, its 2022 sequel completely won me around. It's just, Elden Ring was right there, man, come on. And the thing is, at least initially, the recently released DLC for said sequel, Horizon Forbidden West Burning Shores, proves once again that not only does Horizon have just the worst naming scheme for everything it puts out, but that it continues to be a victim of its own release schedule. It's just that this time around, the problems have nothing to do with the relative ambition of any open world competitors. It's that the year and change gap between the base game and this expansion, as it turns out, is the pitch perfect amount of time for me to have completely forgotten how to play Horizon Forbidden West. Seriously, some advice. Before you head to that new mission marker, it might do you some good to just wander around a bit first in the main game. Climb some mountains, forage for supplies, hunt some robots, build up that muscle memory once again. Because in requiring that you beat the main game, continuing directly from where its rather lackluster conclusion left off, Burning Shores assumes you still retain a strong degree of familiarity with the mechanical and systemic rules of this universe. Your version of Aloy and all the skills and upgrades you accrued through dozens of hours of play. Hell, just the basic flow and rhythm of the game's moment-to-moment encounters and exploration, with Burning Shores going to precisely no lengths to re-explain almost any of its inner workings to players who, like me, might not have thought much about Forbidden West since they first played it. And this meant that a good portion of Burning Shores' 5-hour runtime saw me simply trying to grapple that knowledge back. Battle by awkward battle, menu by dreaded menu. I mean, almost as soon as it begins, Aloy's newfound quest to find some tabloid celebrity holed up in the long-buried remains of Los Angeles goes awry, and suddenly you're up against multiple high-level foes, expected to simply remember exactly how to utilize the environment to your advantage, to craft and switch between different categories of weapons and traps on the fly, in a way that had been totally wiped from my mind, leading to multiple frustrating deaths, and a genuine wonder if I was ever going to get that feel for this thing nailed down again like I did last year. And yet, it might surprise you to learn that after rolling credits, I came away from Burning Shores with my fondness for Forbidden West as a whole fully restored. I ended up having a really good time with this thing. Let me tell you about when it all clicked for me. It was during one such potentially awkward moment, where a battle with several mid-level enemies in an open arena saw me flailing around wildly in a desperate bid for survival, throwing down whatever I could and jumping between combat and stealth in a surprisingly protracted manner, seeing as this wasn't positioned as some big boss battle, but rather just a regular hunt. It took ages, and I was never really sure I was playing correctly or using every tool I possibly could in some optimal way, but that was kind of it. I started to remember how shockingly frenetic Horizon's encounters can get, and how much I actually actually enjoy that about it. How the developer's willingness to challenge and at times overwhelm players places a trust in said audience and their patience that few big-name AAA releases, especially open-world titles of this technical fidelity and so-called prestige, seem willing to do. See, Forbidden West, as exemplified by the continued splendor of this DLC, has all the hallmarks of a game more interested in being looked at rather than played, where animations and automated set pieces take precedent over actual player control. You know, look at how realistically these characters move in this gorgeous environment. Just be sure not to touch anything off the beaten path now. And indeed, Burning Shore's take on a post-apocalyptic LA showcases in no uncertain terms that this is still one of the most technically impressive games graphically ever made. To say nothing of the utterly gorgeous vistas you're treated to in abundance, it says a lot that even the dankest, dingiest cave is lit so well that it becomes downright enchanting. The beautifully saturated glow of the natural world here contrasting perfectly with the cold, metallic sheen of the robotic giants that now traverse its landmass. This is a world where not only has nature reclaimed society back from mankind, but the machinery that rose in its wake has now tried to claim nature back for itself. And so much time has passed from then that even that machinery now lies in rusted ruin. Seriously, YouTube footage has never done this game justice. It is so often a sight to behold. But what I like most about Forbidden West Burning Shores is how it's way more than just a series of pretty pictures. I mean, I kind of enjoy that refamiliarizing myself with its systems doesn't come super easy. The game isn't afraid to bite back at you a bit. Sure, there exists a lot of design cruft, features whose purpose can seem more than a little diffuse. The menus are unwieldy and the melee combat still really sucks. But outside of that, Horizon systems are as densely packed and interwoven as the synthetic tendrils you see mingling with natural vine. Battles aren't merely run-and-gun affairs. They require investment and analysis of all those different systems, picking out what approach works for you and applying it to these impressively bespoke ecosystems you stumble upon. Even just getting a feel for enemy movements within these ecosystems can take some time. And while you can plan out all the traps and environmental manipulation you want, you're almost certainly going to have to improvise in the face of perilously stacked odds. Burning Shores isn't afraid to grind you into the dirt occasionally, even when the results feel a bit awkward and potentially unfair. In Forbidden West's case, I can only describe it as everything just converging to create a scenario where you feel appropriately small, insignificant in the grand scheme of things, conveying the all-important vibe that nature here isn't cruel, it's just uncaring, which to me is as daunting as it is exhilarating. Because crucially, just as Horizon's world doesn't exist purely to accommodate you as a player, it also isn't going to stop you from approaching its harsh landscape however you want, even at the cost of appearing pretty janky in the process, as even the steepest rock faces, the most precarious remnants of society's past, can be conquered with enough Skyrim-esque gumption. Exploring the world in this way, picking a big mountain, climbing to the top of it, marveling at the level of detail in the environment, and luxuriating in the view at the top before gliding all the way back down, continues to be some of the most fun I've had exploring an open world since Breath of the Wild. Again, sure, this surprisingly unfettered freedom can occasionally lead to situations where you inadvertently reach an area before a story objective deems it so, only highlighting the scripted nature of a subsequent enemy encounter when the mission marker actually takes you there. But personally, I'd choose that awkwardness a million times over some other open world game purporting to provide the thrill of inhabiting some indescribably massive world right before placing an arbitrary wall in front of you and saying no like a stern parent. See, even when Horizon appears to say no in this way, it's often more of a we'll see, making me all the more willing to poke and prod at the impressively rewarding possibilities afforded by the game's traversal mechanics. Horizon's willingness to sacrifice a bit of narrative consistency, of technical stability, in favour of letting go of the player's reins a little bit, is in actuality the very thing that makes its world feel more immersive, more like a living, breathing place, than if they were so concerned about making sure you were always in the right place at the right time, like so many other open world games do, making their environments feel restrictive and artificial by comparison. That said, to return to the parenting analogy, it's not as if Burning Shores is entirely free from moments of sitting you down and forcing you to eat your bland vegetables. In this case, taking the form of its story, which, despite me getting a bit emotional about the realization that this might very well be the last released performance of the late, great Lance Reddick, still left me feeling pretty cold overall, as cold as Horizon's narrative has, unfortunately, always left me. There is some tonal, thematic stuff that still works well, with Burning Shores continuing the base game's penchant for taking current real-world issues, environmentalism, the cults of personality surrounding sociopathic billionaires, tech gurus and the like, and extrapolating them so far beyond even the post-apocalypse that it forms a not insignificant part of this new world's spirituality, and in the process, avoiding a lot of the corniness that so often accompanies media that plays directly into the current moment, but with so much of this story still being conveyed through the same monotonous shot-reverse-shot lore dumps, and Aloy's inability to shut up about what she's seeing during gameplay. The narrative scope of this world that the writers and developers have clearly put so much thought into is trivialized, shrunk down, and to me, cheapened. As for Aloy's developing connection to new companion Seika, while plenty of the quote-unquote reasoning for certain audience members' disdain reveals all the extremely dumb, hateful nonsense you might unfortunately expect, I can't honestly say I was wholly sold on the way this character pairing played out myself, with its development and conclusion feeling pretty rushed, and more importantly, and I get this may be specific to my playstyle, failing to line up with the way this relationship is experienced during gameplay, with Seika's insistence on leading you through the most dangerous areas filled with massive beasts, only to tell you off for trying to take care of an objective that literally just requires them to shoot an arrow at a thing you're holding open because she alerted enemies to your presence in the first place and is now demanding you fight them before she can slowly perform the required animation, meaning I now have to spend 15 minutes methodically taking down said enemies and getting my butt handed to me multiple times, all while my companion proceeds to do extremely little to help. It all meant that despite the occasional nice moment here or there between the two, I didn't exactly share Aloy's fondness and admiration for this character's supposed abilities as expressed in the cutscenes. And it's a shame because what actually rules in Burning Shores, what has always ruled in Forbidden West, is that more so than other open world titles operating at this level of technical mastery, you have the ability to create your own stories through both combat and exploration, through those seemingly insignificant hunts that unravel into these lengthy, perilous adventures of your own making, looking at the kind of surface that any other game might say is a no-go area and viewing it as a challenge, thinking, I'm going to go there, I'm going to climb that thing. Hell, in the process, you might stumble upon, for example, the shadowy remains of a formerly grand machine, who at any other time could probably wipe you out in an instant, but here, whose majesty is brought low by some random buoy in the middle of the ocean, whose ropes it simply became entangled in, now long forgotten. This kind of detail, whose narrative scale inspired a genuine awe in me, can be totally missed, and it's in these moments, of which there are many, where you realize just how much more effective the game's environmental world building is than any amount of monotonous narration Forbidden West heaps upon you in cutscenes. And look, if all of this has seemed less like a review of Burning Shores specifically, and more a reappraisal of its base game, it's because I don't necessarily think that Burning Shores is some masterclass in DLC or anything like that. What it does, however, is serve as a perfect excuse to get lost in this playground one more time. A reminder of what so gripped me, so surprised me about Forbidden West last year, even when its plot, the narrative of these games, does so little for me personally. The results of its more ambitious elements may be strange and daft and occasionally infuriating, but I kind of respect that a game of this abundant polish can also place enough trust in its players to simply figure it all out. This approach makes the stunning world they've created feel all the more massive, inscrutable, and dangerous. It's bigger than you. It doesn't exist solely to accommodate you as a player, but rather to make room for all of these different, bespoke ecosystems, and as a result, makes it all the more meaningful when your resourcefulness becomes the thing that leads you to conquer the burning shores. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, all that daft YouTube stuff. It really helps the channel and it means the world. A massive thanks as well to my patrons who you can see on screen and are all getting access to exclusive, fully produced videos that aren't available here. Your continued support is what allows me to keep going with the work I do on this channel in a sustainable way, and I seriously cannot express how grateful I am for that. You are all the best. Special thanks go to Mark B. Writing, Artyom Vitsyuk, Mel Meek, Michael Tritt, Rickety Cricket, Cameron Niceros, Urban Cheese, Charles J. Liu, Alistair Dunn, Vitautis Catharsis, Dolly Bowman, Young Condor, David Karstens, Tom Webster, Danis Sikauskis, Jordan Midler, Christopher Faherty, Nicholas Villeneuve, Ruth Knapman, Yogesh Deshpande, Leah Chinello, Captain Knussbrich, Bryce Snyder, CPJ MLT Limited, David Björk, Timothy Jones, Tommy Carver Chaplin, Shardfire, Lynn Browning, Dallas Keaton, Charlie Kimball, and Charlie Yang. And with that, this has been another episode of Writing on Games. Thank you all so much for watching, stay safe, and I will see you all next time.